Features in StreamYard. I didn't even know.
There are, in fact, new features in StreamYard. Did you know that you can do a double ender, as podcasters call it, where the person on the other side records a clean copy of their video and audio and uploads it at the end? So no matter what the connection is like between the two of you, you have two perfect recordings.
Get out of Dodge. Well, good thing we're sponsored by StreamYard.
We are sponsored by StreamYard, cbrogan.net/StreamYard. If you would like to try this and make your own fine video show, get your own philanthropist author to be a guest.
Yeah, who's our guest today?
Lynne Twist. She is the author of Living a Committed Life. She has been involved in causes for years, including helping with hunger. And I mean, really, it's hard for me to find a cause she hasn't been involved in and why she's touched so many. She's a co-founder of Pachamama Alliance. She's the founder of Soul of Money Institute. So there's just so much to talk about.
Well, let's start talking.
Hi, everyone. Tim Kitzrow from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Kerry Gargone, Boom Shakalaka.
Backpack Show.
Ending world hunger, empowering women's leadership, saving the rainforests. I mean, it's all in here. We have a lot to cover. Yeah.
Steve Garfield is in a time machine, it looks like. Hello to my biological mother, Diane Brogan. Steve says good afternoon. Maybe he's in Prague.
Maybe he is. Hi, Chloe.
It is afternoon for Chloe. And hi to Leslie. Good to see you. Carrie, I have to send you what Leslie sent me. It was really funny. You'll get a real kick out of it. I'll send it a little later.
I look forward to it.
Yeah. Well, let's drag our new friend, Lynne Twist, out and talk about living a committed life. Lynne, I watched your little micro documentary. It was called. It was like a 3-minute or so, real fast rush through like the decades of body of work that you've done. Maybe you could give just a quick précis to warm people up to why you're sitting with us today and how you got there.
Well, I'm sitting with you because you invited me, so that's really the answer.
There is that.
Thank you.
But I think perhaps you contacted me, or we contacted each other because I just wrote a new book. And, I wrote a book years ago called The Soul of Money, which got a lot of traction because, people are always cuckoo about their relationship with money. And so the Soul of Money book has done really well and helped people kind of transform their relationship with money in life, not by having more money, but just by letting go of all that anxiety and kind of craziness around money and having a more peaceful relationship with it. And this book called Living a Committed Life is really about how to live in today's world where there's so many epic, crises. It's kind of like a crisis a minute. The environment, the health crisis, the political crisis, you name it. It's all kind of falling apart. And people are so worried all the time and concerned and anxious about the world, and it's valid. But I suggest instead of being a worrier, they become a warrior and kind of start working on turning things around. So this book is really about how to do that, how to move into a big commitment that takes your life out of your life starring you into getting involved in the world, getting involved in action and making things work. So that's kind of a baby summary. And I've been an activist all my life. Oops, sorry.
That's okay.
I've been an activist all my life, and I call myself a pro-activist because I'm an activist for, not against. I know what I'm for, and I know what's in the way, but I'm not against it. I'm here to dismantle it. Hospice, it's natural death, and midwife, the stuff that we want. So I think that's why you have me, but we'll see.
So there's two reasons. One is because Fazia suggested you, and I trust and love Fazia, so I was instantly like positively inclined towards having you on. Another was she sent me a copy of the book, so that was another, having looked at it. But the other was watching the same micro documentary that Chris watched. You talked a lot about scarcity, the illusion of scarcity, and how really if everybody were to share what we have, there's plenty and there's enough for everybody to thrive. And that's, I thought, this is somebody we need to talk to, because right now I would love to see more abundance kind of mindset in the world. People are still kind of clawing at each other.
Yeah.
And it makes me sad.
Me too. Well, scarcity, I think, is a unconscious, unexamined mindset that was here before we were all born, and will be probably here when we die. But we don't have to buy into it the way we do. But the consumer culture, the extreme consumer culture that we live in, the commercializing of everything, the commodifying of everything, is based in this belief that there's not enough to go around and someone somewhere is always going to be left out. And that belief is unconscious and unexamined, and actually, I think, not true. And so I call it the great lie of scarcity. And it comes from the cultural kind of way that the world is organized. The money system, everything is about accumulation and consumption and getting more of everything. I call them the 3 toxic myths of the lie of scarcity. The first one, the unconscious belief that there's not enough to go around and someone's always going to be left out, and you got to make sure it's not you and yours. So you accumulate way more than you need to make sure you and yours aren't left out, even at the expense of people who are left out, which creates this horrible inequality and which creates an experience of scarce resources when that's not really the case. And the second toxic myth, so first is there's not enough. Second is more is better of anything and everything, which is kind of crazy. And then the third is that's just the way that it is, and you got to go with it. And those toxic myths sort of define the way we look at the world. So we don't see the enoughness, the fulfillment, the incredible plenty, the abundance. Gandhi said there's enough for our greed, enough for our need, but not for our greed. And so we're kind of creating the scarcity we fear rather than paying attention to the sufficiency, the enoughness that's just naturally there. So that's my little mini course on that whole thing.
Perfect. There are a lot of people, I think, who hear something like that. And again, everyone's in a different circumstance. One
Sure.
of the circumstances is you come into money, or you find that you suddenly look around, like, in your little documentary, it said, we were debating between a BMW and a Mercedes, and I suddenly came around to that, like, what the heck are we doing? And that's one place. Another is people fresh out of college, or in college, and they're starting their activism where they're still kind of living on ramen. It's tricky when people feel or worry that they have not enough. To your point about the very first, of those things, how do you help someone realize, even if they're maybe not of means, that there's still a lot they could do to contribute to this and to really live this kind of a way?
Well, first of all, to recognize that the scarcity mindset is a mindset and one that you can release yourself from. And one way to do that is to start to live in the experience of gratitude. Now, I'm sure that sounds too simple to be true, but actually it totally works. And when people live in what's called grateful living, where you are really paying attention to what you have instead of what you don't have, something happens and what you have start to expand. I use a phrase, what you appreciate appreciates. And that really works. At the same time, I know people need to earn a living. I know people, there's an economic crisis right now. I know people have lost their businesses due to COVID. I know all that. And I actually my heart goes out to people that are in those circumstances. At the same time, I've learned from working in hunger and poverty and being with people who have, so little that you would actually call it nothing, that this experience of gratitude and love and really recognizing the whole and completeness of being alive, that if you start there and realize that your life is given to you rather than you're just alive, your life is given to you, and what are you going to do with it? You start from a place of wholeness and completeness, and then you build from there rather than starting from a place of lack. I once had a woman who came to me. She was a single mom. Her name was, I'll say her first name only, Brenda. And she had a credit card debt of $150,000. She was a single mom with 2 kids. She just didn't know what to do. And she was just a complete, wreck. And she came to me because of the book, The Soul of Money, the first book I wrote. And the first thing I did with her was I asked her to the next week, between the time I saw her on a Monday and the next Monday I was going to see her again, to acknowledge everybody who came across her path. So to say something that validated them, when she picked up her cleaning at the cleaners, thank the people at the cleaners for doing such a wonderful job. Or when she, somebody gave her a seat on the bus, to really go out of her way to thank that person, or to acknowledge and celebrate every single person that came across her path in a week. And she said, well, what does this have to do with my $150,000 of debt? And I said, just start there and we'll talk next week. And she did that. And when she came back the next week, rather than being her debt, when I first saw her, she was her debt. She was $150,000 in debt, single mom with no way out. That's who she was. She came back the next week, and there was a person there. There was Brenda, who was really lit up about life and, really realizing all that was working in her life. And then she had this debt. So she was distinct from her debt. There was a real person there. And then we could start working on her debt because she wasn't it. She was herself. So stuff like that really changes the game. And I think that's probably what your show is all about in many ways, just having people find their joy, find their laughter, find their love for life, and then go to work on earning money and making things work. So
Steve Garfield just ordered your book.
Oh, good.
He also says you need to watch, I think it's Spirited on Apple. And Elizabeth Quintanilla says, hello to the backpackers. Fazia loves us, which makes sense because Fazia is the one who sent me the pitch in your book. And Annette says, what a gift today to begin with you and your guest, Lynne Twist.
Thank you.
So everybody's excited about that. But we're all hungry for inspiration and purpose now. I think especially having been kind of locked down, some of us, more arduously than others, we're re-examining our lives, especially like a lot of people don't want to take the commute back, for example. They're figuring out other ways to spend their time. Twitter is imploding a little bit, and a lot of people are looking for a replacement. I'm one of the people that's like, you know what? I don't know if I need a replacement for Twitter because I'm finding other ways to spend that time that are more fulfilling. So does it have to be like a big sweeping realization, sort of like the one you had, or can we make change in our lives in more incremental ways?
Oh yeah, of course we can. It's like this lady I was just talking about. It's really just shifting your attitude right now about today. Like, for example, I have a wonderful teacher named Brother David Stendel-Rost. He's an incredible Benedictine monk. He's in his 90s, and he's the icon of gratefulness. And one time he was staying with me, and he just, the way he lives is in absolute gratitude. And so he has no possessions. He's a monk. And he woke up one morning, he said, today I'm going to be grateful for yellow. Everything I see that's yellow. Oh, look at that. Look at that beautiful yellow pad. I love yellow pads more than white pads when I'm writing. I like that very much. Oh, look at the sun. Oh, I love that yellow dress. There's a yellow bird outside the window. And he spent the day being grateful for yellow. There it is. Or being grateful for water. So
grateful for pink.
Yeah, perfect. You can start with anything. Grateful for the technology that makes this possible. Grateful for the conversation. Grateful that we have time to talk to each other. Grateful that we put down all other work and just said, let's hang out together. So you can start anywhere. And a committed life, which is the term of this book that I wrote, is really about creating a commitment larger than your own life starring you, so that you're really in service of something, that you're getting up in the morning in service of something besides your own life starring you. And that's really liberating. It sounds kind of like an entrapment, but it's the opposite. It gives you the freedom to express yourself, to find ways to really feel satisfaction from making a difference, knowing that you matter. So that's really what I'm advocating, and particularly since the pandemic, because the world is, we have noticed, such a mess. There's so much to do. And rather than be depressed about it, get in there and do something about it. And then all your own kind of worries and concerns about yourself, they move to the background, and what moves to the foreground is getting the job done, whatever it is, cleaning up the homeless, or working to make your neighborhood just a little bit safer, or being a little bit friendlier, or, finding a place to, to adopt some some abandoned kittens, or it can be small, or it can be ending world hunger. Like that's what I did. That's what I got involved in. And whatever it is, I think people have a role to play in today's world, or they wouldn't be alive. I really think there's a dharma, there's a gift, there's a contribution everybody has to make. And we get so caught up in doubting ourselves and wondering whether or not we're cool or everybody likes us, that we get kind of this kind of stream of negative thinking and doubt and being uncertain about ourselves. And when we just commit to something, all of that noise starts to calm down. We don't have time for it because we're making something happen. So that's what I'm recommending. I advocate and I live it.
The Leslie says things are nice, but at the end of the day, they're just things. Purpose, on the other hand, is far more valuable. And Annette says, finding our joy and laughter with Carrie and Chris. Thank you for the backpack show. Grateful for you. We're grateful for you.
Thanks,
The
Annette.
community we get to serve.
I want to circle back to what you said about Brenda and the fact that in your conversation with her, that whole concept of just go out and be grateful for a bunch of things. This fits to the committed life story that you just told as well, because it's essentially that idea of make it bigger than, and it's a very interesting way to look at everything, because that's one of the challenges. Like people who deal with clinical depression, for instance, I myself, I always say it's a very belly button-y kind of an scenario, because once you're dealing with all those chemicals and then the mood really drops and all that, you spend a lot of time looking at your own belly button and how terrible things are, and you look at you. And one of the best and easiest ways out of it is to help in any way.
Yes.
And I like your idea that gratitude is help. And I think people wouldn't necessarily categorize it like that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not the same as putting money in a bucket, but saying to that cleaner, boy, you really helped my life. That the fact that you do these things for me and clean my dresses for me makes it so I can show up at interviews and feel confident that my clothes will be in good shape. It's very interesting that gratitude as a form of help is something you're recommending. Can you talk just a tiny bit more about that?
Well, I both gratitude and acknowledgement. So acknowledgement is not compliments. Compliments are wonderful too, but when acknowledgement is like really saying to someone, really validating specifically their contribution, and it says, I see you. So for example, the two of you, I would say you have such a lighthearted way of being. It's so easy to talk to you. I'm sure people who come to this show, feel better because they did, because of the mood that you create. So I want to acknowledge that myself, I'm on interviews all the time now. That's what happens when you're an author. It's a wonderful thing. And Fausia helps me do that. But being on your show, it has a feel that's really uplifting and fun. It's early morning for me. I'm in San Francisco, so it's 7 a.m. for me. And just the way you smile, Carrie, and Chris, the sound of your voice and you're jolly and uplifting. And so to acknowledge that uplifts me. It makes me feel good to say that, and hopefully it makes you feel good to hear that. So acknowledgement is what I suggested this woman do, which actually leads you to the gratitude for your own life. And as you walk in gratitude, everything shows up differently. You can even be thankful for the problems you have because they give you, something to work on. And I'm not saying that it solves everything, but it does make it shifts. It creates a different context, let's say. So, for example, the climate crisis. It's a huge deal. I mean, my God. It's scary. It's confronting. We kind of don't know what to do about it. It's everywhere. Nobody's escaping it. There's fires and floods and tsunamis, etc. But what about looking at it this way? That humanity's, obviously off course. We need a course correction. And this is major feedback from the mom, from the big mom, from the mother, the earth. She's giving us big feedback. So perhaps it's not happening to us as much as it's happening for us. The shift in that little proposition there changes the way we look at it. If we really listen, this is happening for us to help us make a big course correction in the culture that we live in. That's a take, consume culture. And if you look at it that way, then there's a little bit of gratitude for, oh my God, this is really waking us up. We really got to pay attention to the way we're living. or the pandemic. Actually, it did happen to us, yes, and that people died and got sick. I got sick. It's still happening. At the same time, it perhaps it's happening for us as an assist for us to rethink, reset, redesign our lives, recreate life in a way that's more healthy, more joyful, more true to who we are, and not so greedy. And so that these kinds of little shifts, they make a huge difference in the way we perceive life, and that we are being given these gifts rather than we're the victim of them. So that's another aspect of gratefulness. And I like to break down the word gratefulness and realize it's about the gratefulness of life. That's what it really is. When we're grateful, we're in touch with the gratefulness of life, which is what everybody wants to be.
I'm grateful the pandemic helped me clean up my Twitter feed. Helped me figure out who I didn't need to be connected with anymore. Elizabeth says, so acts of service and acknowledgement as a path to gratitude. And Carrie and Chris are lighthearted and fun. And Leslie says acknowledgement and gratitude are also contagious, which is wonderful. That's true, because you light someone up and then they pay that forward. I wanted to ask you about philanthropy or giving back as a life purpose and a mindset. It's not just one cause. Like I was saying before, you've worked on hunger, and you've worked on the Amazon rainforest, and you've worked on women in leadership, all different causes. I feel like some people think, well, cancer survivor support, that's my thing, and they get into it, and that's okay. But after a while, some people seem to feel trapped by it. Like I know someone who works for one organization now and is looking to make a change because it's been 20 years in support of the same organization. And while it's an important cause, they feel like that's just one sliver of the world and they want to do more. So how did you, Scott? It's almost like you've jumped around, but what's the common thread for you?
Well, how I see it is that I listen to the calling of my heart. There's a wonderful phrase by Howard Thurman: don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes your heart sing, and do that, because what the world needs is people whose hearts are singing. And in many ways, that's how I've lived my life, and I recommend it because it works. But it looks like I've jumped around, but when I look back, there's a larger context that I hold, which is this wonderful phrase from Buckminster Fuller, who was one of my teachers when I was a young woman. He said, let's create a world that works for everyone with no one and nothing left out. That pretty much covers it. And when you think, gosh, if I'm here on Earth now and I can play that role along with many other people, creating a world that works for everyone with no one and nothing left out, then the world is my oyster. There's plenty to do, plenty to choose from. And every part of whatever it is I choose from is going to be along the lines of creating a world that works for everyone with no one and nothing left out. So you could say that's the context of my life, or that my life has been given to me and that I get the opportunity to give it where it really can matter, where it makes my heart sing and makes a difference in the world. And so ending world hunger I was fortunate to be in the right place in the right time when the Hunger Project was created. I helped create it. I'm not a founder, but Buckminster Fuller and Werner Erhard and John Denver and other people were the founders, and I was around then. And with the Pachamama Alliance, I was a founder because Indigenous people from the rainforest called for first contact, and I was lucky enough to be one of the people that was called. Now, I wasn't called on the phone. They didn't have a phone, but I was called through a series of dreams. So it was a pretty interesting way to be called. And it became clear to me through a wonderful story that I was being called by an Indigenous group in the Amazon, deep in the Amazon, that had very little contact with the outside world and was ready for contact. And that was the Achuar people. And it came through dreams and visions. And I couldn't deny it. I had to go. So, actually, I think all of us are called, if we're paying attention, something's calling to us. What breaks your heart or what makes your heart sing? Those are clues to what may be yours to get engaged in, what may be yours to make a difference with, what may be yours to be your kind of dharma. And when you find it, when you discover it, when it calls to you and it's a match, it's just thrilling. It's thrilling. Because I think what everybody really wants is to make a difference with their life. And I think we all can. And I think it's this time in history, it's kind of an all hands on deck time. So I invite people to really find it and go for it. And that makes life really fun, really joyful, and really meaningful.
So you mentioned training with Buckminster Fuller just a few short years ago when you were a young lady, and 3 or so years ago. And I think that I think you had a great opportunity there, but we all think of Buckminster Fuller as the buckyball guy, the interesting and obscure math guy. John Denver, it makes sense. You know, I could see you bumping into him. How in the earth were these three people, the triad that dragged you into their web and made it even more expanded and abundant?
Dragged you into their web. You will help us save the world.
Yeah. Well, I had taken the S training, which is Werner Erhard's creation, and it became the landmark forum. And it had made a big impact on me. And shortly after that, I was just enamored and intrigued by Buckminster Fuller, who had invented the geodesic dome, who was called the grandfather of the future, who was this extraordinary guy. A little individual making a big difference with his life is how he talked about himself. And I went to hear him speak in Marin County, California, with 2,000 other people. And he did a talk about the intellectual integrity of the universe and the opportunity for one human being to make a difference that could impact all humanity, which was the experiment of his life. And when I heard him say that, and when I heard him talk about scarcity and sufficiency, which I touched on a little bit earlier, it just like I had a kundalini thing come up my spine. I started to cry. I was just sitting in the audience with 2,000 people, but it spoke right into my soul. And after that, I ended up really, although I got to say, the real truth is I didn't understand what Bucky said almost ever. I didn't understand his books, but I loved him. He was a little short, little kind of like fire plug kind of shaped kind of guy with a bald head and thick glasses. And he was in his 80s when I started to discover him. And he was kind of like a grandpa looking guy. And he was like a grandpa because he was just filled with love for the universe. And he was just astounded by molecules and atoms. And, you know, I didn't know what he was talking about, but he loved it. And I was attracted by his love for the universe, his love for the intellectual integrity of life. And so I realized that if Buckminster Fuller met Werner Erhard, who was at that time really kind of like a teacher for me, something amazing would happen. And so along with some other people, I introduced Bucky Fuller to Werner Erhard. And those two geniuses, really, I call them both geniuses, had a series of conversations in January of 1976. This dates me. I was a young woman then, very young, but I was, you know, an adult. And when they had this conversation, it lasted for several days. Out of it came this commitment to end world hunger, that we had enough food to feed everybody, but we didn't have the commitment to take care of everybody. And that hunger was an integrity issue, not a food issue. And they generated together this commitment to end hunger, which became the Hunger Project. And that just, you know, I don't know, swept me off my feet. I thought if I could participate in ending world hunger, oh my God, that would be the greatest thing ever. And then they started engaging with John Denver, who obviously had a lot of visibility. He was the number one recording artist of the time at that time. So, and he was a friend of Bucky's and a friend of Werner's. So the three of them, along with many other people, really started this thing called the Hunger Project. Another guy named Bob Fuller, who was head of Oberlin University at the time, became a very important part of it because he was head of what's called the EST Foundation. And I was just in the right place at the right time. And I just thought, oh my God, I want to work with these guys. I want to do anything that they want me to do to make this happen. This is so exciting. And it was inconvenient because I had 3 little kids at home, but it was so inspiring. I could not do it. So that was kind of the beginning of my life of my path of ending world hunger and getting involved in global issues. And you know, to hang out with John Denver, to hang out with Werner Erhard, to hang out with Bucky Fuller and many of the other people ultimately I ended up hanging out with Mother Teresa, if you can believe that, in India, which is like
Second person we've had on the show that volunteered with Mother Teresa.
yeah, it's just awesome to have sat at her feet and had her be a teacher for me. So making a big commitment like that gives you access to amazing people. That's another thing that I highly recommend. So those are some of the stories I have. It's incredible.
Annette says this is giving her fodder for our practice of my 3 words for 2023. That's a goal-setting exercise that Chris has done for years. And a lot of us have tagged along with it.
Yeah,
do it too.
Sounds wonderful.
It's funny because I was going to talk
Still
about
got
that
my 3.
in a
Mockingbird.
Oh, fire, mockingbird, and wellspring.
Oh,
fire's like burning away things like underbrush, things that are no longer serving. Mockingbird is learning enough about different areas to help create amazing content about them, and wellspring is refreshing my own creative juices.
Oh, I love that. Is that for next year or this year?
For this year. I have to pick 3 others for next year.
Awesome.
January 1, we reveal them. But I was going to go in that direction too. So it's really funny that Annette brought it up, because one of my 3 words for 2022 was pluses. And the idea being seek the pluses, like always look for, I'm stuck here, but instead of worrying that I'm stuck here, I'm just going to keep moving. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to do this other thing. I'm going to find a plus. And it's not like finding the positives. It's just keep finding a way forward so I don't get stuck on any burrs along the way. And so as you were explaining sort of your gratitude thing, as you explained, your acknowledgements are not compliments, I really saw that kind of idea. How do you work on managing your personal energy? And by that, I also sort of mean what you choose to consume in. And I'm very, very sensitive to negative information. But if you're going to save the world, you have to, absorb that information. How do you manage that? What's your energy story, so to speak?
Well, that's a great question. I love that, Chris. Well, one thing I do and I recommend to people is to pay more attention to managing your energy than managing your time. We get really caught in schedules, especially now that we live in the Zoom world so much. You can do back to back to back to back back stuff, and not even get out of your chair. And to pay attention to managing your energy means that you look at your to-do list, you look at your, the things that you have on the ballot for the day, and what's giving you energy when you look at it, and what's taking it away, what's draining it when you just look at it. When you look at the name of a friend or the name of a show you're going to be on, or something that's on your to-do list and it drains you, pick the things that give you energy that are on your list. There's a wonderful phrase from, I can't remember this guy's name. I always want to quote him, but then I can't remember his name, but he says, and I say this now too, avoid the leeches in your life and cultivate the lilies. And that can be people, and that can be projects, and that can be to-dos. And if you cultivate the lilies in your life and avoid the leeches, eventually, some of the leeches you actually need to pay your bills. You need to do this, you need to do that. That some of the things that you need to go to the dentist. I went to the dentist yesterday. That may be a lily for some people, but for me, it's kind of a leech. But
it's not a lily for anybody.
But I'll just say that if you're cultivating lilies all the time, you have the energy to much more energy to deal with the leeches when you need to. So that's one way of talking about it. And then another way of talking about it is knowing that that the gift of being alive and having a purpose larger than yourself pulls you out of any kind of pain. So there's a phrase that I always like to use, and I've been using it in almost every interview because I think it's so cool. And it's from Michael Beckwith and Reverend Deborah Johnson. And they teach beautiful things. But one of the things that they say is pain pushes until vision pulls. Pain pushes until vision pulls. And I love that because, I've had 3 kids and I know what it's like to be giving birth. The more it hurts, the closer you are to having a baby. And you know that. So give me more pain so I can get this baby out. And it's that way with everything. When something's new is coming through, sometimes it takes pain to give birth to it. We don't realize something new is coming through. But when we realize, yes, something new is coming through, then you can tolerate the pain because you're concentrating on the vision. And so when we're having, like right now in this political divide, in this time of climate crisis, in this time of pandemic, in this time of economic collapse. We need a vision. We're in the pain. We need a vision. And that's one of the things that I think is really important, is to be the kind of person, and I like to say that I am, who generates possibility wherever I go. I don't ignore the problems. I see them. But I know that we need possibility to get beyond them. We need something to hang on to. We need to see that every breakdown in our lives and in the world has the seeds in it for a breakthrough that's greater than the breakdown. Every breakdown in your own life, if you look at it, has the seeds in it for a greater breakthrough than the breakdown. And if you know that and you start looking for them inside of the breakdown and watering those seeds, you end up with a breakthrough. And the breakdown was the platform you needed to have the breakthrough. The breakdown might be a divorce. It might be a bankruptcy. It might be an illness. But if you're really willing to look for the breakthrough, it's always there. So I can't remember your question, but I think I kind of answered it over and over.
It was about energy, about like consuming negative information when it affects you in a significant way. And you suggested managing your energy rather than managing your time, which I think is
Yeah,
really
and
wise.
I really pay attention to what conversations I enter and what conversations I listen for and listen to and what conversations I generate. Because another thing that I want to say is that I don't think we actually live in our lives. I don't think we live in the world. I don't think we live in our relationships. I don't think we live in our communities. I think we live in the conversation we have about our lives. I think we live in the conversation we have about the world. I think we live in the conversation we have about our relationships, the conversation we have about our community. And we may not be able to change our lives all as fast, or the world as fast as we want, but we have absolute omnipotence over the conversation we have about our life. We have absolute omnipotence over the conversation we have about the world, we have about our relationship. That's where the levers and dials of life are. So I manage the conversation I choose to be part of. And if it's gossip, I don't want to be part of it. I won't participate. If it's mudslinging, I won't participate. I just back away. I don't go there. I don't really, I feel a little bit uncomfortable now with all the violence on the, Netflix and all these things. It's so overwhelming, the violence that we're exposed to now. I do listen to the news, but I listen to NPR because it's much more void of sensationalism and the mudslinging and the criticism. So, I just manage the conversations that I'm in so that I can keep myself centered. And I think that's a real key. And I think that's probably the right answer to the question you asked me a long time ago, Chris.
I love what you did, though. So I think it's definitely, I don't believe we live in our lives. I believe we live in the conversation of our lives. That is the perfect abstraction. And it's a
That
great
should
way
go in
to-
your journal for today.
It's in my journal. I just wrote it down while she was saying it. So
And over that, we have absolute power. After that, we have
Mhm.
absolute
and over that
power.
we have absolute power, right? All the dials, all the knobs. So we've hit a part of our show that we always come to one way or another.
Oh, and here's our person of the day. Kaboom!
That very excitable person is Tim Kitzrow. He was the
Who I
voice
love.
of NBA Jams and NFL Blitz and other video games like that.
He's the best.
Yeah. He coined a phrase that is now said very frequently on sports shows. Boom, shakalaka. Which means who knows what. But here's Annette. Annette is our person of the day. Great job. You are lovely. Thank you for being part of the show. Get yourself a free apple, completely free. You just have to go buy it.
Annette sent me chocolate once that had potato chips in it.
It was amazing. All right. Okay.
Yes.
We have also this part of the show that we've always asked every single guest we ever have, which is what goes in your backpack. This could be something physical, like potato chips with chocolate. I mean, chocolate with potato chips. It could
Either
be
way,
something
I'm flexible.
completely metaphysical, like visionary phone calls from a jungle. So, Lynne Twist, what goes in your backpack?
Oh, let's see. Possibility is always there. The wisdom of Indigenous people that I've been privileged to work with, and the capacity to be authentic and see see love and divinity in every face.
Ooh,
Mm.
I love all of it. And evidently
Papa
you helped.
Brogan says thank you
Mm.
for
Well,
helping him set his 3 words for 2023: gratitude, acknowledgement, pain.
Oh, thank you.
Now has the way for that to go. I was biting my tongue on a joke about the dreams bringing you to the jungle, because you said you received the call through dreams, and I was just wondering if they had things like dream waiting, but that like three-way dreaming. Could you ever get a busy dream? I don't know. So that's where I went with that. And related to that, I just had one final question.